So I think we can start. Hi, everyone. My name is Julia. I'm part of Goldsmith Star, which is the branch of the national charity Student Action for Refugees. And thank you so much for joining us here today. Together with my lovely colleagues, which I will introduce to you in a second, we are hosting this session today on how you can get involved with Europe Must Act. And I'm sure that most of you have seen or heard what happened last week, and that we took the decision to end our webinar early because a small number of people tried to disrupt our meeting. But we're back and we're very excited. So to be able to share with you more information about our campaign and to ensure that Europe becomes a more welcoming place. But to keep all participants safe, we've decided to stream to YouTube, and we've also disabled the comment section. So if you have questions though, you can always ask us. And if you click the first Google form in the description below, then you have access to the Google form. As I said, you can ask us questions, and Ella, our friend, she will monitor the questions and she will then send them to us. So at the end, we're having a very short Q&A session. But please don't get this confused with the second form in the description below. That's the one that you can fill in the end of the session. And this is more for you to register your interest. Now about the structure of our webinar today, we're aiming to finish after 1 hour, but please stay with us if we run over a little, if you can, of course. We'll start now though. So our first speaker is Lucy. She's going to tell you about London Must Act, and she will give you a bit of background information about Europe Must Act. She is, by the way, part of London Must Act. After that, we've got Claire. She will tell you a bit about Cities Must Act and how you can open your own city chapter. And as another example, we've got Verity here from Europe Must Act, who has collaborated with a STAR group, a Student Action for Refugees group in Europe before. So she will tell you a bit about political outreach, and she will tell you a bit about past actions that we've done. Lastly, as I said, we've got the Q&A session. So just type your questions to us, and we are there to answer them at the end. But to start now, we will, as I said, we will start with a quick video, because most importantly, and why we are here, is because we all want to see change and we demand a more humane migration policy. So some of us, or I think almost all of us, have worked and volunteered in refugee camps before. But to give you an example and to basically show you how horrible the conditions are people are living in, we will just share this very quick video with you of Zainab, a woman who's still stuck in a refugee camp on Samos. So please watch it, but keep in mind that you will see the camp, and if this content is distressing for you, then you can look away or whatever. Great, thanks.
دوستان، زینبم از افغانستان 5 ماه شده به جزیره ساموس زندگی میکنم و خیلی مشکلات اینجا و خیلی سخته. واسه خودم که تنهای و میزن بی سرپرستم واقعا سخته. دیگه بریدم همون صف، لاین غذا صف، دشویی صف، از صبح که میشه روزگارمون فقط به صف میگذره. اینجا دیگه نمیتونیم مثلا به کلاسی برسیم، زبان یاد بگیریم. صبح میری از ساعت 8 صبح سر صف همون میستکی تا ساعت 12 اگه نوبت برسه که بری همون. دشویی همینطور صف. لاین غذا از 6 صبح، از 6 جلوتر، چون من بی سرپرستم نمیتونم برم. از 6 که میرم تا ساعت 9 و نیم اگه نوبت به من برسه. او هم اینقدر جنگ میشه، میترسم، دعوا میکنم. مرداد با هم دیگه دعوا میکنم، خانوما با هم دیگه دعوا میکنم سر صف غذا. غذا درست حسابی نیه. واقعا هر چی غذا میخوریم انگار هیچی نخوردیم، خورده نمیشه، مجبوری این غذا رو میخوریم، غذایی که میگیریم هیچی رسیدگی نمیشه، هیچ امکاناتی نیه، برق نیه، شب از 7 شب باید بخوابیم، اونم که خوابی که به ترس و لرز که دعوا میکنم، هر شب یک شب در میون دعوا میشه، همدیگر خو میزنم، خصوصا مجردا اونا از اونا هم نیه، خسته شدم واقعا، یک سال و نیمه که نه همه به اینجا سرگردونم، جا درست حسابی ندارم دیگه، بریدم، دعوا میکنم با هم دیگه، ما هم که هستیم اینجا آرامش نداریم از دست اونا، خود اینا هم آرامش ندارم، خیلی سخته، خیلی به سختی میگذرونیم.
Thank you. So to start with, I would like to thank Julia and Ella and all of Goldsmith's staff for organising this webinar in solidarity with Europe Must Act. I would also like to thank those of you who were attending last week and have joined us again, and those of you who've joined in solidarity after the events of last week. I'm going to give you some of the background of the Europe Must Act movement, which is a social movement demanding a new and humane migration policy. Just to briefly introduce myself, my name is Lucy, and I'm a secondary languages teacher, currently based in South London. I'm also part of the London chapter of Europe Must Act, and I've been lucky enough to be involved with the Europe Must Act campaign since it began at the start of March. Back in 2018 and again in 2019, I spent time on the island of Chios in Greece. Chios is very close to Turkey. To give you an idea of its proximity, you're able to clearly see Turkey from the Chios coastline. So for many people who are making the dangerous journey across the Aegean Sea to Europe, it's islands such as Chios, Lesbos, Samos, Kos, and Leros, which are usually their first point of arrival in Europe. And consequently, it's this part of Europe that is left to deal with the situation at hand. When I was in Chios, I was volunteering with Action for Education, which is a fantastic grassroots NGO providing non-formal education and psychosocial support to young asylum seekers and refugees trapped in Aegean island camps. Since my time on Chios, I've tried to stay engaged with the situation and kept in contact with my colleagues who have remained on the islands. And I think those present on the islands would be able to attest to the fact that over the past 12 months, the situation for asylum seekers and refugees has been constantly worsening. I think it would be fair to say that for many, it would often feel as though it couldn't get any worse, and then it just does. And at the start of the Europe Must Act campaign, there were around 40,000 people residing in camps with a combined capacity of 6,200. Some of you may remember at the end of February, the Turkish government reneged on the EU-Turkey statement and announced that they would no longer stop people from trying to cross the Greek-Turkish border into Europe, which was something that they had previously been doing as part of a European policy of trying to stop asylum seekers from entering. Violent pushbacks, attacks on asylum seekers and refugees, acts of intimidation and violence against NGO workers, and even acts of arson, such as the burning down of an NGO warehouse in Chios ensued. And I do believe it's worth mentioning that pushbacks at sea are continuing. And according to Are You Serious, which reports widely on the situation across Europe, that as recently as Sunday evening, so yesterday evening, a boat carrying approximately 24 people was in distress north of Lesbos. And it's reported that the Greek Coast Guard removed the petrol from the boat before leaving them adrift in the sea. Both the Greek and Turkish Coast Guard refused to help, and this was a boat containing a number of small children and a man with a disability needing medical attention. So we must acknowledge that this violence against people seeking safety in Europe, the richest continent in the world, has occurred as recently as yesterday evening. Getting back to the timeline of Europe Must Act, it was at this point at the start of March that it was formed, and on the 2nd of March, an open letter was launched addressed to European leaders with 3 key demands. And these are now the key goals of Europe Must Act, which we'll just show you on the website while I talk you through them. Thank you. So the first was for the immediate decongestion of Aegean islands through fair distribution across member states, not just Greece, or moving people from the islands to the mainland. The second was to replace the EU-Turkey statement with a fair and humane migration policy. And the third was calling for safe and dignified means of reception across Europe. We initially planned to arrange demonstrations across Europe to broaden the reach of the message. However, a couple of weeks into the campaign, lockdown began, which then completely transformed our plans, and we quickly realised that we would have to find ways of protesting and raising awareness purely online. So the open letter gathered the support of 10 MEPs, 160 grassroots NGOs, and around 100,000 citizens across Europe. We also produced a book that was sent to the leaders of the EU and its member states, as well as Switzerland and the UK. And the book contained messages and photos that had been generated as part of our online campaigning. Our campaign led to a video meeting with the EU Commissioner for Home Affairs, Ylva Johansson, and European migration policy is under her remit. She is said to be coming up with the new Pact for European Migration. We approached the meeting as an opportunity to present her with our demands, backed by the support of grassroots NGOs who have worked in the field for years and understand that change is needed and what change that is, as well as the support of citizens across Europe. From our meeting with Commissioner Johansson, it was made clear that it is the countries that want to do the least for refugees and asylum seekers who set the standard in Europe. And from here, we decided to launch the Cities Must Act campaign. The premise of Cities Must Act is to demonstrate to those in power that there is widespread localised support for refugees and asylum seekers to be relocated away from the Aegean islands to allow for fair and dignified means of reception. As part of the campaign, cities and towns across EU states and the UK and Switzerland have started petitions aimed at local government levels to get pledges for numbers of people to be relocated from the Aegean. And Claire will go into more detail about this part of Europe Must Act in a moment. As a movement, as well as our key goals, we also have a set of core principles outlined on the website. So I'll just talk you through those as well. Thank you. We are non-violent, we are everyone, we are based on autonomy and decentralisation, we're volunteers, and we avoid shaming and blaming. We want to work in solidarity with governments to make change happen. But if you follow our online media, our social media, you will know this does not mean shying away from calling those in power to account for the many human rights abuses occurring at a local and European level against refugees and asylum seekers. So you might have seen recently our continued reporting on the repeated extensions of lockdown that only apply to refugees and asylum seekers and the consequences of this health-wise in terms of asylum applications for camp residents, while the rest of Greece is opening up even to tourists. I think that the principle of autonomy and decentralisation is a really exciting one and something I love about Europe Must Act, especially with the Cities Must Act campaign, because it's really important for us to recognise that it's the local chapters that are best placed to understand how to work within their own communities to try and gather support, to try and raise awareness whilst following the key goals and core principles that we share. And I know at the end, Julia will outline the different ways you can get involved with Europe Must Act. And I'm really hoping that after this, you'll be wanting to volunteer with us in some way. And for me, after the events of last week, what it really showed me that it is the voices of love, compassion and solidarity with displaced people around the world that is really needed, online and offline. So please, whether it's with us or someone else, please consider taking action in some way. There's the Europe Must Act blog, which can be found on the website. There's the Raising Voices project, which gathers testimonies from those residing in the camps or working on the ground, such as Zainab, that you heard at the start. And there's also a creative collective. So there'll be more about those later. Now I'd like to hand over to Claire, who's going to talk more about Cities Must Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy, for giving us an overview of Europe Must Act. So as Lucy said, now I'm going to focus on Cities Must Act. So to start, here is our campaign launch video from March. Please be aware that this video contains images of children and adults in the horrendous conditions of the camp. Thank you, Verity. Okay, so our Cities Must Act campaign seeks to create long-term linked campaign groups in cities and districts across Europe. And for this, we have 5 key goals. The first goal is to influence municipal policy by getting mayors to pledge an exact number of refugees and asylum seekers that they are willing and able to give refuge in their city. We know in most countries, for example, the UK, it may be a national decision finally, but mayors and council leaders will know the doctors and hospital capacities, the schools, the accommodation, and the police reality. They know how many people they can realistically take, bearing in mind this is an emergency situation. Even a very small pledge, 10 people, is enough to show solidarity across Europe. Our second key goal is to use results from the municipal level to influence national and EU policy. Third, we want to raise awareness about the situation on the islands throughout every section of our societies. Fourth, we want to get the conversation going about European migration policies and their consequences at a municipal and national level. Finally, we want to develop a Europe-wide network for future campaigns. So what has been our progress? Having started in March, we now have 44 chapters across 12 countries, with nearly half of these in the UK. In partnership with Zabruka, Europeans for Humanity, and a number of other incredible organisations, we have seen pledges from across Europe, including Lindau in Germany with 50, Ghent in Belgium with 300, and Lausanne in Switzerland. While these numbers are not massive, they show solidarity across Europe, with the people being forced to live in the camps, and send a message to our European-wide leaders that we as European citizens do not accept the current reception conditions or the migration policies. In the UK, we are asking council leaders to raise motions in national and UK government. Our Scotland chapters have already reached this national level, with a motion in the Scottish Parliament entitled Relief for Refugees Held on the Aegean Islands, launched by the MSP John Finney. We need 3 more MSPs to make the 30 that we need to sign this by the end of July. So if you have any contacts in Scotland, please help. But our Cities Must Act campaign must go beyond these vital petitions and politicians' pledges. We must also develop a more conscious European society where everyone feels they can get involved in activist campaigns, where every individual understands their importance in ensuring a more humane system for all. For example, our recent Action Day encouraged city chapter members to be good trolls, responding to people's misconceptions around refugees through clear facts and respectful interventions. In my role as onboarding focal point, I get to meet all of the newbies starting new chapters. And it has been incredible to see that there are so many people across Europe who want to be an active part of a more positive welcome. One of these people is Verity, who I will now hand over to speak to a little bit about York.
Thanks, Claire. So yeah, hi, I'm Verity, and I'm part of the York chapter. So I've followed the Europe Must Act campaign since it was born in March, and then I've been actively involved since April, which is when I set up the York chapter. So we in York are about 4 months old now. So just a tiny bit of background about me. So I've been engaged in and horrified by the humanitarian crisis with regards to refugees in Europe and the world for many years now. I have experience of working on refugee camps in Eastern Europe. My experience isn't actually from the Aegean Islands, and a lot of my experience is local, so volunteering with local groups, local campaigns and local initiatives in York and places I've lived previously. And we've actually got a lovely mix of that in the York chapter. So some of us in the York chapter are actually on the islands now. We have someone who's on Chios now, and also she's from York, so she's in our chapter. We have some who have had experience volunteering on the Aegean Islands, some that again have local experience, some who don't necessarily have lots of, you know, experience working with refugees or refugee initiatives previously. And the reason I mention it is because I think the York chapter is a really nice cross-section of Europe Must Act in general. It's a range of experiences. It isn't about coming as an expert. We're all volunteers. All that is necessary is a passion for human rights and a passion for evacuating the Aegean Island camps. You're not expected to come having already been an expert. So some of the things I want to talk about with regards to the York chapter. So as Julia mentioned earlier, we've previously collaborated with STAR and also our local amnesty group in the same collaboration. And in Europe Must Act, we're all about collaboration and working together on projects with other movements and organisations. So complementing what other movements and organisations are doing and working together towards shared aims. So our collaboration with STAR was a previous webinar, which was on World Refugee Day, the 20th of June this year. It was called Perspectives on the Humanitarian Situation on the Aegean Islands. We had some amazing speakers, each from different backgrounds. So some from legal backgrounds, some from humanitarian backgrounds, some were refugees living on the islands. And we managed to get into contact with all these people and bring them together in collaboration with the other groups we're working with, so STAR and Amnesty. And it was a really great thing to collaborate on, and we're really looking forward to collaborating with STAR and Amnesty and other groups and further projects in the future, and hopefully more offline projects as we're able to, and it's safe to do so, which I will chat a bit more about later offline wise. Something else that I'll talk about, which Julia mentioned, is York's political outreach and political outreach for chapters in general. So in York, our petition has currently been signed by 2 councillors, and we've had written support from others, which is great. And it's also been signed by local MP Rachel Maskell, who's also been very supportive. And we're in the process of working with those on the council who have supported us so far to build that support across the council and push the campaign on the council agenda to get that pledge. Rachel Maskell has also delivered written questions to the Home Office about our campaign, which is really awesome. And we're also working with her with regards to raising our campaign in central government. So political outreach in your chapters, it varies from chapter to chapter. Obviously, it depends on your city, it depends on your council, but broadly it involves reaching out to politicians and councillors. So writing letters, emails, getting in contact that way, arranging meetings, arranging calls to discuss the campaign, and finding support on your council that can push it onto the council agenda. And when you join Europe Must Act, there's a lot of support with that. So we have template emails, template letters that have been sent successfully previously that you can use. And various chapters are all at different stages. So obviously new chapters are joining all the time. And you'll find that when you join, there's a really supportive network of other chapters. So we're a really supportive bunch. And if ever you had a question, or if you weren't sure how to go about your political outreach or anything, actually, there will always be someone with an answer to a question, or that will be there to kind of like be a sounding board and you can discuss with. So yeah, so basically there'll be support with everything. So we've got things in place that we can support with, and so political outreach isn't as scary as it might sound, or doesn't have to be as scary as it might sound. Yeah, so now we'll go over back to Lucy. Thanks, Lucy.
Hi, thanks, Verity. Before I continue, just a quick reminder, there is the Q&A form below, so please do, any questions that you have, go ahead and pop them there, and Ella will be able to look through them and we can respond at the end. So just a reminder of that. We've just had some wonderful examples from the York chapter about the different ways that we can raise awareness and gather support. And as I mentioned previously, I've been working with the London chapter, and I wanted to also mention our outreach to local and national organisations. So this webinar itself is a wonderful example of local cooperation, as we're lucky enough to be connected to Goldsmith's STAR group, thanks to Julia and Ella. And this approach is really important to us in general. As I mentioned previously, and as has been mentioned by others, we really want to make sure that we're working with similar organisations and we're lifting each other up to work as effectively as possible to raise awareness about the situation in the Aegean and across Europe for displaced people, for asylum seekers and for refugees. So, for example, at the moment, the London chapter is working to highlight all of the fantastic work that's going on in the borough of Lewisham with the various organisations working in solidarity with refugees there. And we want to use our following to raise the profile of parallel campaigns and organisations. We're not in competition. And as a young movement, we have been so grateful to other groups and organisations such as Help Refugees, Safe Passage, Refugee Rights Europe, just to name a few in the UK context, but there are so many more across Europe who have helped us with advice and support. And on a national UK scale, we recently shared the urgent Safe Passage petition regarding the immigration bill and family reunion. And we're not here to duplicate, we're here to cooperate. And I think if we have as many voices as possible from all different parts of society as well, not necessarily organisations that are even refugee focused, but people that know their community and know that their community has the capacity to bring people in, then that's something that's really important to us. I also wanted to mention the previous action days we've worked on. So as I said earlier, early on in the movement, we had to rethink our tactics because of lockdown, and we were predominantly campaigning online. An example of what we were able to do at this time was our Colourful Windows action, where we provided printouts to colour in, potentially encouraging parents or carers to colour those in with their children, to bring up the topic of refugees and welcoming to the community, and encourage people to put them in their windows and share photos. But we've been really happy recently to be able to start to take part in more offline actions where it's safe to do so. For example, there have been public screenings of videos such as the Raising Voices clip you saw earlier from Zainab, and something as simple as drawing a chalk human chain on the ground to show solidarity. And in Manchester, this also involved writing facts about Aegean camps on the ground, which sparked real life conversations with people in the street. And that's something that's really important. We want to burst the bubble, raise awareness, remove misconceptions, or help to explain things so that we can raise enough awareness to bring about localised support for relocating people away from Aegean camps. I'll now hand back over to Verity, who's going to talk about some exciting plans in the upcoming months for Europe Must Act. Thank you.
Thanks, Lucy. So coming up for Europe Must Act. So one thing that we have coming up, which is really exciting, is our Aegean grassroots report. So as we've mentioned, since the start of Europe Must Act, we've really prioritised networking and partnership with other organisations. So with our first open letter, it was signed by 160 NGOs. And something that's really important to us is sharing and amplifying the voices of grassroots organisations working on the islands, as Lucy explained. So our Aegean grassroots report is a way to do just that. So on the 19th of August, which is World Day for Humanitarian Action, we're publishing an advocacy report in collaboration with other grassroots NGOs on the islands. And the idea of that is to report on some of the problems on the islands. So the report has gathered testimonies from various NGOs working in different areas, such as emergency response, education, psychosocial report, NGOs that work specifically with women, distribution NGOs, etc. And it's just bringing all of those voices together and bringing testimonies together to spread the message of the what they're experiencing on the islands. It's going to be a big launch, so our creative collective are working on making it super user-friendly, really accessible, bursting the bubble, as we've said, bursting the bubble so we reach outside of our own echo chamber of people who already agree with us, already know what's going on. So if you'd like to be involved with that would be really awesome, and that's another thing that you can get involved with us, so get in touch by filling in the Google form below. We also have lots and lots of ideas for future collaboration with other movements. So as we say, we've collaborated previously, and we'd really like to do more of that. So collaborating on action days, either local, national, or international level, either online or offline. We've got lots of ideas for it, and I'm going to go through just a couple of the ideas that we have, but also we know that you'll have loads of ideas, and we really want to hear those as well. So things like you can collaborate on challenges, so things like the sofa challenge, which is where you spend I don't know, 24 hours on a sofa, or a space that's like 2 meters squared, which is similar to the amount of space that an asylum seeker on the islands might have to live in. Cooking challenges, so using ingredients available to asylum seekers on the islands in order to make meals, make food in order to raise awareness. So that could be like a social media challenge. Sports, we've got loads of sport ideas. So for example, running the distance of the food queue on one of the islands in one of the camps, and running that same distance in a local area, a local route, again to raise awareness in your local city. Other things, like you could collab on online and offline events. So something that we actually did in the York chapter a little while ago was we did an online quiz, which was, you know, had statistics in it, like how many asylum seekers are resident in New York, how many asylum seekers are in the UK, that kind of thing. And that was also a way to kind of get people from York to come to Zoom to find out about our campaign, to find out about what's going on the islands. That could also be, depending on the situation in your city, it could be an online or an offline event. It could also do other types of events like concerts or poetry events, or anything at all, online or offline. And also things like Lucy mentioned, so collaborating on action like the chalking, exhibitions, raising voices. So alongside the Raising Voices videos, we also have Raising Voices posters, which hold like a quotes from the testimonies in the videos that can be displayed around your city. That could be something, as well as doing a chalk chain. You could also do a human chain, if that is something that is safe in your city, depending on the situation. There's all sorts that we could do. So we have loads and loads of ideas. We've got loads more, and we're really eager to hear yours. So please get in touch with us. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Claire.
Thank you, Verity. Okay, so as you have heard from Verity and Lucy, who are both focal points for incredibly active, awesome chapters, none of us joined Europe Must Act as experienced advocacy experts. We are all just regular people who saw a way to help. So for you, how can you open your city chapter? The role of a chapter focal point is rewarding and includes lots of self-development. You are responsible for engaging the local community and demanding further action. Some things that we ask you to do and that you can enjoy doing are running the local Facebook group, establishing strong, mutually supportive links with a range of local NGOs and community groups, reaching out to local public figures, tweeting at your mayor and local council, getting local media involved, and welcoming other activists and local people on board. Your biggest challenge will be to pace yourself to ensure you create a sustainable long-term activist chapter. The 35,000 people stuck in the island camps need to be evacuated now, but you need to pace yourself. We have found that the time needed for a chapter focal point is 2 to 3 hours per week minimum, and a commitment of about 2 months is needed to really establish a sustainable chapter with a core team of local activists who take on the various roles, from setting up and posting updates on groups, on the petition, running the Facebook group, Twitter or Instagram, reaching out to local community groups and NGOs, researching local politicians and their interests to find out how to approach them, and getting articles in local media, even trying to get a celebrity or two if you can. Remember, we want to raise awareness beyond our bubble of convinced people. We need to connect with all parts of society, including businesses, sports centres, faith groups, university and college groups. We have lots of how-to documents and letter templates in our shared Google Drive, which each chapter focal point is connected to. And in most countries, we also have connections with several local NGOs. You will also be supported by your national focal point and also be part of our WhatsApp group of all the European focal points, now almost 90, as several of our chapters have shared focal points. In the description below this video, you can see a sign-up form, or feel free to just send me a quick email to onboardme@europemustat.org. I look forward to working with you to ensure Europe is a more welcoming place of hope for all who need it. And now, Julia.
Great, thanks so much. Yeah, thank you, Claire. Thanks, Verity. Thank you, Lucy. And thank you, Ella, who's behind the scenes. Just again, a reminder, we still have the Google form. So if you have any questions, we've got time now for you to send us or to submit the Google form, and then we will answer your questions. But before we do that, I just want to quickly repeat all the options that you've got to become a part of Europe Must Act. So just a second. Great, thanks, Verity. So yeah, as I said, there are a lot of options how you can get involved. Of course, you can join Europe Must Act, and we actually hope that a lot of you will do that. You can do that by clicking on the second Google form in the description below. And as I said, there are a lot of options. So you could either become, or not either, you could become all of these, part of all of these options. So one of them is the Europe Must Act coordination team. They're responsible for setting up meetings, coordinating and organizing everything, also talking about the campaign strategy and so on. Or we've also got the advocacy team. They're responsible for the report that Verity mentioned. Then we've got the press and social media team, the diversity and inclusion team, and then also, as Verity mentioned, there's the creative collective and the Raising Voices team. So if you have skills, and I'm sure you do, if it's like video editing or I don't know, like any kind of thing, social media, or if you just want to be a helping hand, please submit the second Google form and get in touch with us. Then just a second for the other slide. Then, as we said, you can also join your already existing Cities Must Act team. So as I think it was Claire, she said that we've already got 44 different Cities Must Act teams. So you can join the team that is local to you, or if there's no Cities Must Act team where you live, then you can also contact Claire. The email will be on the next slide, and you can open your own city chapter, which would be amazing. If you're a star group, yeah, there's the email address. But if you're a star group and you want to do these kind of events, I'm sure that you can either get in touch with Europe Must Act or with the local chapter as well. And as we've mentioned, there are a lot of ways how you can create events, spread awareness. And if you continue reposting and talking about us on social media, that would help a lot too. So yeah, as I said, there's the email address and the Google form. We'll give you all another, or us all, another 10-15 minutes now for questions. So don't hesitate, and yeah, just ask us anything you like. And we're just gonna wait a bit. I know how hard it is to speak in public, so that's a good thing for you now. You can just write your question and we will pick it up and talk about it. Okay. So there is a question. Just a second. Also, if you have any feedback, you can send this to us as well. Okay, there's a question here. So I'll just read it out loud. Though you have a strong focus on decongesting the Aegean Islands, does Europe Must Act also look to addressing the situation in northern France, Calais and Dunkirk, particularly as far as UK chapters are concerned? From Selma. Thanks so much, Selma, for your question. Claire's going to answer that question.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Selma, was it? Yeah. So as you saw from the beginning, when we talked through our 3 key goals, our 3rd key goal is a humane migration policy for Europe. So that definitely encompasses all of the reception conditions, and beyond reception, the conditions of asylum seekers and refugees as they go through the asylum process. Our Aegean Islands initial goal is definitely the first step. It is a massive crisis that a lot of international NGOs have focused on recently, for example, MSF and Amnesty International. We know that it is a huge issue, but there are many other camps across Europe that are also needing attention and the spotlight put on them. But we feel that our strong focus on one specific area helps us to be more effective and to see real achievement, tangible achievement that people feel they can really make a difference with. I hope that answers your question.
Great, thanks, Claire. We've got a second question. Is there currently a chapter for Leeds Must Act or a full list of all current open chapters? And I think it's Verity who's going to answer that question.
Hi, yes, yes to both. There is a Leeds Must Act chapter, which is awesome. You could, if you look up Europe Must Act Leeds on Facebook, you'll find their Facebook group and you can join and you could message them. Or you could also email the Onboard Me email address and we'll put you in touch with them. But yes, there is an awesome Leeds chapter and it would be really awesome if you joined it. They would really love to have you on board. And yes, there is a full list of the current city chapters. So if you go on our website and you go on the Cities Must Act tab, there is a list of all the chapters. They're in alphabetical order, so all of the chapters across Europe, and you can find and see if there's one in your local city already, and if not, get in touch and set up your own. Yes.
Great, thanks for answering that question. Do we have any more questions? Anyone else wants to know more about Europe Must Act or Cities Must Act? I think we're just going to wait here now.
I think there was a question from Edgardo. Are we planning a global action in the EU?
Okay.
Okay.
Just a second.
So in relation to that, if I can just say that we are going from the local level, so Cities Must Act, these chapters are activist groups which will rise up every couple of months, as well as their ongoing action. They will rise up to have big action days to raise awareness, and we will do that across Europe. So although the chapters are working locally, they are part of a massive solidarity movement that is definitely focused on this EU level, European level, especially because it includes the UK, that was a member of the EU-Turkey deal and signed these deals when they first started. So yes, definitely. And that also shows from our beginning when we had the meeting with Ylva Johansson, the EU High Commissioner for Home Affairs. And yeah, we are open and wanting to discuss this at all levels, from the grassroots to the highest political levels that can create change.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I didn't see that question, but we've got a couple of more questions. So there's one from Katrina saying, can you talk a bit more about the terms of the EU-Turkey agreement? Sorry. Who wants to
Yes,
talk?
okay, so this is a massive question. And I think to do it justice, we have blog posts on this. So if I can ask you, if I can direct you to our website that Verity mentioned, europemustact.org. And on that, you can see blog posts which clearly explain the EU-Turkey deal. And also, if you go to our Facebook group, you can see there a short video that explains the EU-Turkey deal and the different aspects of it.
Great. There's one more question, and it's from Nikki. Don't worry, Nikki, about joining us late. That's completely fine. Do you think there are initiatives for fundraising we can help you with, or have you planned any of them?
Verity?
Yes, sure, I'll answer. So we don't have a fundraising campaign as such, but we're always accepting donations. So we always need donations, but we don't have like a constant fundraising campaign going on. But if that was something that you would be interested in inputting on, then we have a funding group as well. That's one of our working groups that discuss funding. That'd be really, really great if you wanted to get involved with that. Or fundraising can also happen locally in city chapters. So as Lucy explained, one of our principles is working autonomously. And so city chapters can fundraise independently. So if you wanted to get in touch with your local city chapter, they could also tell you about any fundraising that they're doing. And if you have any ideas, then we really, really welcome them. So please get involved. Yeah.
Perfect. Great. Thank you. Are there any more questions?
I think there was one more question that was related to what we talked about before, working, highlighting the situation in different camps across Europe. So yeah, I just want to say that, like I mentioned before, about how we understand that there are a lot of camps in Europe that are facing terrible situations, terrible conditions, and we are supporting parallel campaigns that focus on these conditions. And in our local city chapters, we are raising awareness of local groups that are working on these campaigns. And also internationally across Europe, we are working with a number of research groups and activist groups that are working in many different refugee camps.
Perfect. I'm just having a look if there are more questions here. Sorry, I'm really bad at multitasking and with different devices. Okay, just 1 second. There is one. Okay, I think I can read it out now from my phone. Oh, nice. Someone said, hello. First, thank you very much for this webinar and for the amazing work you have been doing. Thank you. I've recently joined Hub, Human Before Borders, a platform based in Portugal for action against inhumane and illegal treatment of migrants and refugees. Following the extension, okay, just a second. Yeah, following the extension for the 6th time of the refugee camps lockdown by the Greek government, despite the opening of the national borders to tourists and others, we're analyzing several possibilities to take action to increase political pressure to evacuate the camps. With the violation of the EU-Turkey agreement on early March, several petitions were created for this purpose. Urgent need to evacuate the Greek camps, including one of yours that you have already mentioned. Hub was one of the NGOs that signed it. Now with the pandemic crisis, the question is coming, sorry. With the pandemic crisis, this evacuation is even more needed before it's too late. My question to you is, if you are thinking of updating the petition to account for the COVID-19 crisis, or if you are thinking of creating a new one, although you would lose existing signatures. Also, what are your thoughts on joining forces with other NGOs across Europe to create a joint campaign, a strong one to do this political outreach? Also, what are your suggestions on political outreach? Great. Anyone wants to answer that? I know it was very long. So I think the question was, what can you do? What kind of political outreach? And maybe also talking about Europe Must Act and the future of Europe Must Act. Are we continuing with the petition, or is Europe Must Act planning to create a new petition? So yeah.
If I can say that, yeah, thank you. Hub is amazing. They are one of our partners in Portugal and are super active in Lisbon with our Lisbon chapter, and was a huge help in setting it up and making it really, really active, and in Porto as well. So thank you for that, Hub people. And yeah, I think it's really important that we are working with all of these different organizations, as you say, and working towards yeah, European level. Could you repeat the question, please, Julia?
So it's basically about political outreach and the future of Europe Must Act in the campaign.
The petition, yeah, sorry. So the petition that was signed, yeah, by nearly 100,000 people, we are keeping that petition live as evidence. That was written to the EU leaders. Then we went to the very, very local city level, because that's what Ylva Johansson said we basically need to do to convince the high up EU leaders. We first need to go to the city level and convince people, so that then we can feed back to councils, to national levels, and then to the EU level. So our city campaign works towards that Europe-wide level. We've done 2 open letters, which have been signed by many of our grassroots partners and supporters. For example, we did one on the for opening the camps when the restrictions were eased across Greece, but not for the camps. And another one regarding the fires that happened in Samos, Chios and Lesbos. So these open letters are like petitions that are signed by the NGOs that signed the initial massive petition. I think these council petitions and national petitions work, we will take them then to the EU level rather than doing another petition. Please do write again, write maybe a 1-sentence question again if that didn't answer it.
That would be good. But we've got one more question, a very important question in my opinion. How do you think the UK's exit from the EU might affect our ability to lobby for change in migration policy? Or perhaps, do you have a specific approach regarding UK chapters and advocacy over here? From Selma again. Thanks, Selma.
I can answer this. I'm having some sun-related issues, but I can still answer the question. Yeah, so we do have a specific approach for UK chapters. So we have a UK policy working group, because obviously, like you say, with our exit from the EU, our approach is different. So we're working with other NGOs in the UK, so and elsewhere. So we're working with Safe Passage and Refugee Rights Europe, who have experience of how to lobby the UK government for migration policy change and how to build pressure via local councils and individual MPs. So they're giving us some great advice. And what we're hoping to do is we want to build on top of relocation schemes that are currently in place or about to be in place, to have a specific relocation strand that is for vulnerable people from the Aegean Islands. Specific for the UK. And also, because obviously we're leaving the EU, we can also take the approach of demonstrating how the UK can work collaboratively with the EU without being in the EU. So that's kind of the approach we're going for, of like, look, we can still have a humane approach to migration, we can still be involved in this even when we're not in the EU. Yeah, so if you wanted to get involved and be involved in our UK policy working group, that would be really awesome, and find out more about it, because that was kind of just a whistle stop of what we're doing UK policy wise. It's obviously really complicated. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So I think we have like 3, 4, 5 more minutes. Let's wait if there are more questions. Thanks for everyone who has submitted a question. That was really great until now. Yeah, let's wait. Maybe 1 more minute, 2 more minutes. Also, you can always send us your feedback, as we've said before. And if you have more specific questions, or if you want to get involved, as we mentioned before, you can always email the onboard me email if that's if you want to ask about Cities Must Act and how you can open your own city chapter, or you can submit the Google form, the second one that we mentioned. So yeah. Great. I think there's no more question. There are no more questions there. So as I said before, thanks so much to Claire from Cities Must Act. Oh wait, there's one more. Okay, sorry. Well, thanks anyway.
Is it Selma?
Let's see. Just a second.
I can see we've already had 5 people complete the sign up Join Europe Must Act Google form. So amazing, super excited to respond to you all. Thank you. Very exciting.
So I think we've got our last question, and the question's from Sam. Thank you, Sam. What does the diversity and inclusion group focus on?
I can answer this. So the purpose of the diversity and inclusion group is quite broad. It's basically the idea to ensure that Europe Must Act as a movement is as well as diverse and inclusive as possible. So that's ensuring that outreach is diverse, that we're involving people from different backgrounds, that we're involving people from different parts of Europe, that we're ensuring that we're inclusive and accessible, for example, in ensuring that our social media is disability accessible, or that kind of thing. But the diversity and inclusion team is actually a very young team in Europe Must Act. So we've kind of only just started in our mission. So if that's something that you're interested in and something you're interested in inputting in, then that would be really, really awesome if you wanted to come and join us and kind of help to, I guess, shape exactly what it is that we're doing and what our mission is and how we're getting there. That would be great.
Perfect. Yeah, great. Thank you. Okay, let's finish the session then. Thanks so much to Claire. Thanks to Verity. Thanks to you, Lucy. And also thank you, Ella, for all the work you did behind the scenes. Yeah, it was such a great webinar. As we've said, you can always continue contacting us, but we hope you enjoyed the session. And yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you, Julia, as well.
Thank you, Julia, for hosting.
Thank you, everyone.